All right, you maggots, listen up. Think you got what it takes to be a gamer? Think you can handle the pressure, the competition, the sheer joy of dominating some noobs online? Well, listen up, because Master Sergeant here is about to deploy you into the 117th Gaming Squadron podcast. This ain't your mama's tea party. We're talking strategy, reviews, the latest intel on the gaming battlefield, and of course, enough brews to fuel a B-52 bomber. So grab a controller, crack open a cold one, and get ready to learn from the best, or at least the loudest. Now reporting for duty, your fearless leader, the Squadron Commander.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the 117th Gaming Squadron podcast. I am your host, Squadron Commander Phil, and tonight we are going to talk about something a little bit different. We are going to talk about beer. We are going to talk about video games, well, one game specifically, but we're going to talk about how I found one of my holy grails for my video game collection, Panzer Dragoon Saga. So I'll kind of go into a little bit about what makes the game so rare, why is it so unique among collectors and everything, and just kind of my story on how I found it, because it's just one of those games that for years, once I really became serious about collecting video games, was kind of the one that's, when people say they have a Sega Saturn collection, I'd always want to check to see, do you guys have Panzer Dragoon Saga? And if they did, you know, that's a clear sign that they are dedicated to it. So we'll get going. I also have a few trivia. Well, one little trivia that the store owner talked to me about that I kind of did some research on, but we'll talk about that during the podcast. But tonight's beer I'm trying is Bear Hop from Ursa Minor Brewing. This guy weighs in exactly 6.8% alcohol and so it has Centennial, Amarillo, and Sultana hops. All right, well, let's give it a go. Let's give this baby a crack and see what happens. I've actually been to Ursa Minor Brewery. It's pretty cool. It's like a cabin. I mean, their logo is actually a bear, which I guess Ursa Minor, if your people are not familiar with it, Ursa Minor, I believe, is the constellation for a bear. So, all right. Smells good. All right, here we go. So there's one thing I read about when it comes to beer pouring. I know people say pour it on the side so you get less head, which is true. But I also read that once you pour beer, you do want to kind of have some of the head, because the head actually helps enhance the flavors by releasing it and everything. So if you're reducing the head on top of it, the flavoring doesn't get fully exposed or matures enough, is what they're referring to. So, but I don't know. I haven't really sat down and experimented that, which, you know, maybe a good try one day for an episode. So for being an IPA, it does look a little hazy, but not terrible. Yeah, I mean, I know my glass is clean, but still, I'm just like, no, it's not really that hazy. It's pretty good. So let's see what the sniffs test. Yep. Definitely can smell. You can smell the hops, but I'm trying to think. I think you can smell a little bit of fruitiness. All right. Well, bottoms up. Okay. That's not bad. That's a full flavored IPA. Definitely a lot of flavor. I mean, yeah. The back end of it is definitely, you get the bitterness of the hops. I think you get a little bit of the malt too, which is pretty nice, because a lot of these IPAs, you don't really get too much flavor of the malts. But this one, I think, yeah, I do kind of taste a little bit of it. Okay. Yeah. This one will work for me, at least for this episode. So let's get chatting. So I don't know how many people out there are familiar with Panzer Dragoon Saga or ever aware of it or heard about it. So for starters, I've yet to play it. I've only played it 15 minutes in my life. And that was last summer at Tor Gaming Expo, where they actually had a Sega Saturn with that on it. So didn't really get a chance to play it. But this game came out in '98 for the Sega Saturn, and at the time it was groundbreaking for its on-the-rails shooter that became popular with, Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2 were on-rail shooters, along with Star Fox and Star Fox 64. So that was, they did this combination where you had the on-rail shooters with RPG elements to it. So you had basically hit points, mana, potions, weapons you can upgrade, and stuff like that. So it kind of was like in the early stages of, I guess, what we would think as like action RPGs, which had started to come along around that time. So, but this is one of those games that I've always seen online. I've always seen people holding it, pictures and everything, but I've not physically seen one in person till I was actually on a trip to Tucson, Arizona with my wife to visit my father-in-law. And usually when my wife and I have gone to different towns or cities, I do look up breweries for one of them to check out new breweries, but also at the same time see what video game stores they have. And I'm not referring to just GameStops. I'm referring to actual mom and pa video game stores, because those are the ones that you're more than likely going to find the good stuff, especially for retro games. So one thing about Panzer Dragoon was that, one, of course, we know it was on the Sega Saturn, but two, it's actually developed by Team Andromeda. And when they released it for Saturn 98, it stood out at the time because one of the biggest things was that the Saturn was already losing the console war compared to PlayStation, Nintendo 64. They were in third place, really far behind, especially in the US. In Japan, the Saturn was actually doing quite well and everything. The Japanese did love their Saturn. But here in America, the PlayStation just dominated. And so with that, and by then, Sega had already announced that they're kind of abandoning the Saturn, moving on to their next console, which was the Dreamcast. They only released 20,000 copies in America. Actually, in North America, to be exact. So that is one of the reasons why this game became incredibly rare. It's the fact that you had, I think, they sold maybe about 4 million, 6 million Saturns here in America, compared to what, we know the PlayStation just blew them out of the water, but 64s, what did they sell, like 24 something million? I don't know off the top of my head, but so Sega didn't think they would sell, so they only released 20,000 copies. And you add that in the factor of years of people that kept their Saturn or kept and everything, didn't jump ship, didn't trade in, didn't throw it away or anything like that. So, you know what, you wonder how many of them are out of those 20,000s are actually just gone forever, thrown away, destroyed in some parent's basement box that's just never going to get found. And when they do, probably just going to sell it for $1 to some kid. But I don't know, it's just crazy how this game, let's back up a minute, because the Sega Saturn has actually gained popularity with collectors in the past couple of years. Before, I bought my Sega Saturn for $50 off eBay back in it was the late 90s. Complete box and all for $50. I remember going to a store before it became GameStop called Funkoland, and they just had this table of Saturn games that were selling for $2-3. And I got a couple on there that now I'm looking at it I bought the Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 disc for $2. I think that thing goes, just the disc itself, for $30-$40, if not more. And if you want the complete box, you're paying like $80 to $100. So it's crazy how now Saturn games have become more so expensive because it, again, goes back to the whole, not that many Saturns were sold. That means not that many copies were purchased. That means there's not that many copies out in the wild for people to collect compared to PlayStation, where you go to any retro game store, a lot of the PlayStation games, you're probably just going to see just a crap ton of sports games. I mean, there's no doubt I see plenty of Final Fantasy 7, 8 copies at these retro game stores. Just everybody had it. So when it came to me finding this game, my wife and I were down in Tucson, Arizona. We did check out 2 video game stores, and just Panzer Dragoon happened to be at the second one. So, and I'll never forget kind of like that evening. So we went to this video game store after having dinner with my father-in-law and everything, and it was called Finders Keepers. And I found them on the website. I checked their page, and I noticed that, yeah, they definitely had a good selection of games. They were definitely a video game store. They also had other stuff, too. They had other, like, pop culture geek stuff, too. But it seems like the first half of the building was video games, and the second half was, like, they had a few old arcades. They had consoles. They had, like, D&D, Magic stuff, Pokemon cards. So they kind of dabbled in a lot of stuff. But it's when you first walk in, you have your glass case that you can look down into, but then you also have a glass cases on the wall. And I kind of slowly made my way around the counter of the glass case, and I looked up, and there it was, Panzer Dragoon Saga, just sitting right there staring at me. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm like, and I called my wife. I'm like, look, they have. And I told her that I'm like, they have Panzer Dragoon Saga. And she's like, oh, are you going to get it? And I'm like, no, that thing probably costs, X amount of money. I'm like, that's just too much for me to pay. And she's like, why? I was like, because that's a lot of money, and I just don't want to buy. And you kind of getting upset with me. She's like, well, no, this is a game you've always wanted, right? It's one of your holy grails. I mean, this may be the only chance you get. So I'd say grab it now, even if it is a little pricey, but it's the one you've been looking for. And I was like, okay, well, let me think about it. So thankfully, we were the only ones in the store at the time. 2 other people did show up, but I looked throughout the rest of the store. There's a few other games I did see that I was interested in, but I was like, I can't buy those on top of getting Panzer Dragoon. So after about 15 minutes, after mulling over, I went to my wife and said, yeah, okay, I'm going to get it. But I'm going to back it up because I need to tell you this other trivia fun fact thing. So when my wife and I were looking at it, the owner of the store was walking by, and because I was telling her, like, oh yeah, how rare it was and everything. And the guy's like, yeah, he's like, if you want to know more about it, he's like, if you look in the cases, and because the game came with 4 CDs, and the CDs were in these kind of paper sleeves. So he said that if you have one of the earlier prints, it would come in like 2 white, 2 black sleeves. And if it was a later print, it would only come in black. So when I bought it, I opened it up, I did have a white sleeve and 3 blacks. So I'm like, has to be an earlier print. And by the way, the person who owned it before, just immaculate. Just discs are like perfect. Like, I do wonder if the guy or person who ever owned it before ever played it, because that thing's just like mint. And to me, it does not look like it's even touched a resurfacer. So I finally went to my wife, said, yep, I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy it. I went up to the counter. I said, there's a game I like. So one of the assistants went over, got it. She didn't realize like how much it was. So when she pulled out the case, she kind of was about to hand it. She's like, oh, whoa. She's like, whoa, are you sure you're going to want to buy this? It's this much. And I was like, I'm aware of how much it costs. She's like, okay. So she takes it over to the counter. I'm getting ready to purchase it. And then the owner comes up to me. He's like, oh, you're going to buy it? And I was like, yeah. And my wife was just standing there, and he's like, oh man, can I take your picture and put it up on my Instagram and everything? I was like, sure. So after I made the purchase, I was holding the game. He took a picture of me holding it, and he's like, I'm going to put it up on my Instagram. And jokingly, as I told my wife as we were leaving that night, I was like, I think I made that guy's night, because I'm sure for how much I paid for that game, probably helped pay for that guy's rent for the month. So he's all like, everything going on from now on, straight profit. But no, I was super happy. I was super excited to have it. And now we can kind of talk a little bit more about the game. Even though I have yet to play it, it is going to be a game that I am going to stream. So there's no doubt about that. But in Japan, this game is actually called Panzer Dragoon Azel. It's just called Azel Panzer Dragoon RPG. But here in America, it's Panzer Dragoon Saga. So I'm not exactly why they changed the name, but maybe for regions or something like that. So, but the game, okay. So like I mentioned earlier, it's an on-rail shooting that follows its predecessors, Panzer Dragoon 1 and Panzer Dragoon Zwei. I think it's German for 2. Zwei. Yeah, I think I'm pronouncing it right. And so, with the RPG element. So, when I first played the first, 15 minutes, you find your dragon, and you're flying around, you're fighting. But if you go in the start menu, I can tell you, your HP and your inventory and stuff like that. And you can change your weapons and stuff like that. So, that RPG element, and then you can find items like potions and money and other stuff. So, to me, it's all right, this is going to be, because I love RPGs, love them. And one thing that I will say that I'm probably going to have to get used to when I play it is the graphics. But at the time, so since I'm so used to today's graphics, that going back playing 32-bit games is a little rough, especially if you're trying to play it on a 55, 65-inch HD TV. But at the time, this game was pushing the Sega Saturn graphical limits. It actually had FMV video. I believe it also had voice acting. Yes, it did. So, on top of that, from what I've read, that people say it has a phenomenal soundtrack, and there are people out there who are fans of Panzer Dragoon say they still listen to the soundtrack, which I'm hoping is good, because I love video game music. Final Fantasy, Metal Gear, Halo. There's plenty of them out there that are just great music to listen to. But of course, this game spans upon 4 discs. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the. Now I know the part of this game is you're flying around and doing your on-rail stuff, but you can get off your dragon and do running around. So you can go into different villages, you can go to different areas, and so there'll be times where we'll be on foot and in the air and everything. So in the 2 previous games, you're basically just on the dragon the entire time. There's no getting off. It's just flying, and that's it. So now here comes down to the little bit trivia, like I mentioned earlier. So that CD Sleep trivia, when I was doing the research of it, because I was curious what the owner said to me about, hey, and everything. So it's true that they did have 2 different variations of the sleeves. Yes, if you have white sleeves in it, you have one of the earlier first prints, and then if yours is black sleeve, you have one of the later prints. It just doesn't say the dates that it was printed, but since the fact I have a white sleeve, I'm guessing to believe that mine's an earlier print, but I can't determine, because who knows where this guy got it from and everything. But overall, the case is in good condition. There's no cracks or breaks. The manual is in good condition. There's just one little tear on the bottom corner of the spine. But like I said, the discs are in mint condition. The sleeves are pretty much perfect. There's no bent or rips or tears. The only thing that it's missing to make it 100% complete box is the styrofoam that they would put in the case to prevent the discs from flopping around and everything. So I know I can find those things on Etsy, so I may order a couple and just have some to put in, because I have a few other Saturn games that are missing that too. But man, I'm excited to stream this one. I just saw my game log down, but I was like, when do I want to play this? But anyway, no, I wanted to share my story with everyone. That's how I found one of my holy grails, Panzer Dragoon Saga. So it is now one of my top 10 prized possessions in my video game collection. I would say probably easily within the top 5. Now, it is now my most expensive video game possession, because unless you count my 2 signature Halo, so I have the original Halo Xbox Halo edition signed by all 4 voice actors, 5, including the announcer for multiplayer, and also have a Halo 3 360 console signed by them too. So But either way, that is the most expensive game I ever bought, and I'm glad I got it because it just really, really glad that I have it to my collection and everything. And so I'm so glad that my wife was supportive enough to let me get it, because who knows when the next time I might see one in public. I mean, when we were at Torg, I remember my wife would go around a few tables asking if they had that, and unfortunately a lot of people would laugh in her face, and she's like, what? And he's all like, if I had Panzer Dragoon Saga, do you think I'd sell it? Like, yeah, some people would be kind of little a-holes about it. But anyway, so that's my story on how I found Panzer Dragoon Saga. So one thing like I said, if you're a video game collector, anytime you go to like a new city they've never been to or something like that, always see if they have a video game store in town. They may have one or two. Even like small places like Fargo, North Dakota, they actually had a video game store that's not a GameStop that I was able to check out and find a few things. So you never know. You might find that one game or two or three or accessory or something that you've always looked for, and there it is. So it's one way to kind of keep your collection going. All right, well, let's get down to the beer review. So, Bear Hop from Ursa Minor Brewing. I would say this is a good solid round IPA. Good flavor. Not the bitterness is strong, but it's not terrible because I think the maltiness definitely helped balance it out too. Yeah, no, this is pretty good. I would 7.5 out of 10. I would definitely buy this again. Next time I go back up to Ursa Minor, I would definitely get this on tap. And I'm not too sure if I know I did not try it tonight because they had a hazy there, and I was probably drinking their hazy. So, but anyway, 7.5 out of 10. Good beer, good game, good chat, everybody. So if you have any questions, or actually, you know what? No. If you guys able to, why don't you let me know, like, do you have any, like, stories of you finding a special video game or accessory that you're just like, oh my God, how cool it is, how I found it, or just how happy or proud you are of it, or just, I don't know, do you have what's your most prized video game collection possession that you have? Is it a game itself, an accessory, a console, controller, any memories with that, stuff like that. So anyway, so that's it for this episode. So thank you again for listening, and I'll check you guys next time. Oh, and also check me out on Twitch and YouTube. I do stream regularly, so just 117th Gaming Squadron is my tag. Jump on Twitch, jump on YouTube, say hi, see what I'm playing and everything. I usually try to keep a good consistent schedule, so, and everything. And then you can even chat with me and tell me if there's any other games you want me to see play in the future that you also want me to talk about too. So, but yeah, until then, everybody have a good rest of your day and keep playing cool games and keep drinking good beer. Cheers.
All right, you dirtbags, heard enough? Think you're all high speed and low drag? Well, that's the spirit. But remember, there's always something new to learn on the battlefield. So fall in and subscribe to the 117th Gaming Squadron podcast. And don't be a dang deserter. And if you're looking for some real-time action, the Squadron Commander is always streaming over on Twitch. Follow 117 Gaming Squadron and witness true tactical dominance. Or maybe witness him getting schooled by some kid half his age. Either way, it's entertaining. All right, dismissed. Until next time, stay in formation and keep finishing the fight.